Views expressed by Casters Guild members are only the opinions of that member, and that could change from day to day. Guild members may use mature language, but that in no way means they are mature. Listener discretion is advised.
A portal has opened up in the guild hall, and 2 film detectives have stumbled out. Luckily for them, one of them's already a guild member, so we decided to sit them down and talk shop. And that's the spell we're casting tonight on Casters Guild. Thank you for tuning to this episode of Casters Guild. I am your guildmaster and popcorn enthusiast, Rick Perry.
And I am your guildmaster, Baron Kane, and connoisseur of trash movies.
And tonight we have a returning guild member and a brand new one. Feel free to introduce yourselves.
I'm Caitlin. I'm the returning guild member. I was on our representation in Greek media episode on here. I suck at intros, but I am the film detective, as Rick said. I'm a movie lover, and I'm usually always right when it comes to our arguments with our other guest here, my other detective and colleague.
You're really pushing me to use my guild decree already. Hello everyone, I'm Bryant. I am the other film detective, and I guess the new guild caster as well. One of the hosts for Operation Silver Screen.
And tonight, we're going to kind of discuss, as long as we've got them here, their cases are all about must-see movies. And I've always thought, you have bad movies that are must-see movies, and you have good movies that are not must-see movies. So we're going to discuss what makes a must-see movie. So let's start with this. What is your must-see movie? Like your number one must-see movie?
For me, I am a big proponent of the French New Wave. We've talked about it in our podcast, so I would probably point to one of the films from there. My personal favorite is Band of Outsiders or Band Apart, and I think that is a good introduction to the French New Wave. It's Jean-Luc Godard. His films are not always super accessible for newbies, but I think that one's a good one that's pretty accessible, and it has a good story and moments that you'll see replicated in a lot of other films as well. So that would probably be the one that I would suggest, just because the French New Wave had such a big influence on film as a whole.
And if there's one that I was going to pick, it's going to be something a little bit more mainstream. It's actually my favorite mainstream movie, not my favorite, but it's Jurassic Park. Like, if anybody came and say, hey, what must-see movie should I watch? So, I mean, when it comes to must-see movies, there's so many films that you could choose from. Not knocking Caitlin's choice, because, yeah, French New Wave is something definitely any film snob, cinephile, connoisseur should see, even general audience, to pique their interests. But some aren't going to get it. But I think with Jurassic Park, with Steven Spielberg being such a great director in the first place, it's like, hey, you like Jurassic Park? Like, here's the mastermind behind it to even show people, like, hey, movies, there's some really big roles that go into it. You got the quarterback of films, directors. I think it just blends also a lot of genres at once, so it may, like, awaken something in anybody. Whether it's the suspense, the horror, there's even, like, a little bit of humor in there. I think, after watching Jurassic Park, you can kind of tell, like, what direction you may want to go into for movies. So that's why I think that's like a must-see. Also, there's just so much in there to appreciate. I mean, the practical effects still stand up today from a movie that was made in 1993. And then the last thing is, it appeals to all ages. Like, kids love dinosaurs, and then the parents are going to, love the suspense and the edge of the seat pace of that movie.
For Jurassic Park is actually me and Brian's mutual mainstream favorite movie, and both of us have a lot of nostalgia and with that movie, so I definitely don't disagree.
I think I'm going to say Young Frankenstein. That is definitely... I would recommend almost all of Mel Brooks's movies anyways, but I think if I was going to pick one of them, it would be Young Frankenstein. I think they really latched on to the idea of parody and spoof in that, and just seeing some of those actors in there, especially the ones that I'm familiar with, being so young and hilarious is definitely well worth it.
Is that a mutual for Shane, Caitlin? Because I still have not seen Young
I haven't seen it
Frankenstein.
either. No, I haven't.
I've seen other Mel Brooks films, such as I know this year we're going to do Blazing Saddles because there's a movie called Blazing Samurai that's coming out, which had a trailer, and I don't understand how the two titles relate. They actually changed the title, but I've seen Blazing Saddles. I know Airplane isn't Mel Brooks, but I've seen that as well. Similar humor, but I've always wanted to watch Young Frankenstein. I know Gene Wilder's in there, and even if the film's bad, Gene Wilder hits.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
true. I'm gonna have to say my number one must see movie is Baby Driver. I'm a huge Edgar Wright fanboy. I love all of his stuff. The only thing I will say is if you're gonna watch it, don't watch it with me, because the entire time, especially if it's your first time seeing it, I'm gonna be like, look, the graffiti behind him. It's all the lyrics of the song are there, and like he actually hesitates when he's making his coffee order so he can sing along to the lyrics. Oh, and look at how this matches up to the music. The entire gunfight, every fire and reload, it all matches to the tone and pacing of the song. So like, yeah, don't watch it with me, but I think everybody should see that movie.
Baby Driver is another one where they combine a lot of genres. I would just say I wouldn't, as far as like ages, maybe kids shouldn't be watching that film. But I did enjoy Baby Driver as well. Actually, I don't know, I feel like there was a little bit of mixed reception with it, and I think that's because of the ending. The ending I wasn't too big of a fan of, but at least it opens up for a sequel, which I'm down for.
The other thing I will say about Baby Driver is I'll give a bit of a warning. There is a certain actor in it whose name I won't say, but if you look it up and you see that actor's in it and you don't want to watch it because that actor's in it, I get it. I think you can watch that movie and ignore a lot of him. He's not in it a huge amount. He does play a big character, but like his screen time is short. So I will give that warning to Baby Driver.
And you said that you didn't want people to watch the film with you because you're going to go ahead and point out everything. I would say also that's kind of a good thing when it comes to must-watch films. To use, I think Caitlin's example would be the best for any kind of movie of French New Wave, is to point out certain things that are inside of the movie, whether they're hidden or they're up front, because it isn't really until you have that appreciation of the film that you start to notice it in all films. And it's a double-edged sword. People ask us all the time, why can't you just watch a film to watch a film? And it's because we see things that most people aren't going to see because it's been revealed to us. I know Caitlin introduced me to the 3x3 of framing, and now almost every movie I see, there's a point where I can see the 9 grid squares on it. But at the same time, it does make me appreciate the film more. But the other edge of the sword is that when there's a bad film and they're doing it incorrectly, I notice that and it pulls me out. But I think it gives us a greater appreciation. So when you're having these much-watched films and you're bringing in a person like, hey, sit down and watch this, and then you're just kind of revealing a whole world to them, and it's a good experience. I've had a good experience sharing that with people, and I kind of get really into it. I mean, there's even books out there. There's one book I'm planning to read next, which I've been holding off for years, and it's titled How to Read Film. So there's a huge thing to it, more than people think there is.
Thirds, by the way, is what the 3x3 frame in composition.
Thirds, yeah. I was thinking of so many things. I was like 3x3, 9, 3 square, grid square.
Yeah,
the rule of thirds. Yep.
I think once you start to see those things, you can't unsee them. Like, you'll see them in movies from that point on. But I will say, my point being, I would rather someone watch that movie without me the first time and let them enjoy it. And then afterwards, yes, let's sit down and watch it again together. And I'm going to bother the crap out of you while you watch it. And I point out every little thing.
One thing, I want to bring this up that's kind of related. You said, once you see it, you'll never unsee it. There's a thing in movies that I've noticed that they tend to do, and there has to be a term for it. It has to be known about, but you'll watch a movie, and if there is a set of antlers in that movie anywhere, on a wall, on something, it always ends up behind somebody's head. I don't know why they do it, It's like the Wilhelm scream to me. You'll see it. Just from now on, just watch a movie, wait for the antlers, and then you'll see him behind someone's head at some point.
Yeah, just a very specific framing, I guess, composition. I will say,
exactly.
I agree with Brian, and I agree with you guys that once you see it, you can't not see it to a degree. But at the same time, I feel like sometimes you don't notice it until you're watching a bad film or a film that uses a device poorly. And then I really notice it.
It's kind of a humble brag. It's kind of like when I leave town or I go to someone else's house, Caitlin, and they have a lesser TV, and then I go back home and then I watch my TV, and you can see that difference in quality. Sometimes you're just so used to it. And just kidding, Caitlin, you actually have a pretty good TV. I think we have like the same quality, if not the exact same TV now.
Were you here when I got my new TV? I got a new TV a little bit ago, a couple months. Okay.
Yeah, but you are missing a pixel, so not that
one single dead pixel.
Oh, that's where your eye goes every time, though.
Yeah. So I actually bought a TV. It was 56, I think, or 60. I think it might be 60.
60.
Anyways, so I bought it, brought it home. 2 weeks later, it just breaks. It just stops working completely. So I had to figure out how to haul that thing all the way back to Best Buy, and I got a new TV, plugged it in, and Kenny, my brother, is the king at spotting dead pixels. So he was like, "Do you want me to look?" And I was like, "Yeah, fine, go ahead." But just one single one, and I was like, "I'm not gonna deal with returning this again."
Right.
Or just one single dead pixel, and you can't really notice it. So
Kenny kind of sounds like he has a hidden talent to be like an appraiser.
yeah,
like
probably.
Or he can tell fake art. You should exploit that.
I actually just added immersion lights to my television, which I didn't realize how much I would like them until I actually installed them and watched certain movies and certain shows with the immersion lights on. If you don't know what that is, it's basically a strip of LED lights that go around the edge of the back of my TV, and then there's a small camera that looks at my television screen and then causes the LEDs to match with whatever color is at the edge of the screen. So the colors bleed out past my TV, and my TV is set in like an alcove. So like it's whatever colors going on screen actually bleed past the edge of the screen. It looks amazing.
Actually,
Cool,
I'll have to check that out.
But I'd also like to point out, we all picked really great movies for our must-see movie, right? There are bad movies that can be must-see movies. Do you have a bad movie that is your must-see movie that, like, when you're trying to prove that there are movies that are so bad they're good, what is your go-to recommendation?
So when it comes to a bad movie that is a must-see, and it's kind of relevant because we recently did Top Gun, which is a not so great movie but it's still a must-see just because of the popularity and the themes to it and just being original during its time. But when you say a movie that's so bad that everybody has to see it, and usually that revolves around a movie that takes itself seriously, but it is unintentionally funny. And for that, I would have to recommend one that's fairly popular. It's probably known. It actually has a documentary called The Best Worst Movie Ever, and that's Troll 2. And I think even Troll 2 was the first one that I actually, like, I sat down and put on for, just because I knew how bad it was. My mom was trying to get me to watch it. And the documentary even talks about, like, how bad this movie is. It was directed, I think, by Italian directors who had this whole idea to work off of this IP. Just to say, like, how bad it is, Troll 2 is a sequel to this Trolls movie, and there's not a single troll in the movie. It's all goblins. But the movie it takes itself seriously throughout the whole film, and it is just hilarious. Like, I'm talking to Caitlin, and it maybe something we have to actually do a podcast on for one day, to start doing these bad movies that are actually pretty good unintentionally. And the documentary is interesting too. Seeing the cult following that it gained is really what it's documenting, and also kind of speaking of, like, what was going on set, how this movie was made. I mean, one actor did the Super Mario Brother thing and was literally drunk for all of his scenes.
Time with this one, because I feel like there's a lot of, that kind of mid-level films that we all enjoy. They're not anything special, but we enjoy them. But I don't think a lot of them are bad, even though they might not be critically acclaimed. But I will say I watched one movie recently. It's one that I'm going to have Bryant watch. It's House. It's a Japanese film, a Japanese horror comedy. It's old. It has part of a Criterion Collection. It's very critically acclaimed. So when I went into this film, I was expecting something, a little prestigious, but no, it's a haunted house story. It's absolutely ridiculous. The characters are named like ridiculous names, like fantasy, kung pao, or something like that. Like it's names based off their personality, and it's just this group of teenage girls just going wild. The visuals are hilarious. It was really a wild ride, and it was so hilarious and not what I expected at all. But I kind of appreciate that it did get that critical acclaim, because it is, if you watch it today and you watch it without knowing that background, you would think it's a bad film. And it was made because the director just wanted to make a movie like Jaws, and it's nothing like Jaws.
But was it intentionally bad?
It's a horror comedy, so I think to a degree.
Okay.
Yes.
Have you
but
seen?
It's wild.
Have you seen? And not saying your pick is valid, but have you seen any of the bad movies that are like so bad, even though they were made straight, that they became just unintentionally funny? Because I know, like, usually we kind of stay away from it. I know one of our friends try to have a marathon because they try to do the bad horror movies, which I don't know. Even a bad horror movie kind of, they seem like they were trying to make a campy bad horror movie.
So, not bad horror movie nights, but I do have bad movie nights with some of my friends, where we just watch like 3 bad movies a night. And so, but I can't remember titles, but we do watch some fun ones, but they're always usually themed. I watched Willy's Wonderland recently. That was hilarious. I very much enjoyed that.
Love that movie.
And there's actually another, kind of going in the middle of the Top Gun and the Troll 2. There's another type of bad movies, sort of. And it's a list that I have, and we talked about it recently, which is the movies that aren't good. Like, they aren't good. I can say, like, there's problems with the film. Either they're just not good writing, not good directing. It's just not a great story. But I still personally really enjoy them. And I think, like, the best one I can say, like, the showcase of that list is Gremlins 2, The New Batch, which I don't know if anybody here has seen that. I know, Caitlin, you haven't. But that movie, especially being a sequel to Gremlins, is just, it's not a great story. There really isn't, like, a lot of good things happening, but it is just so goofy and outrageous. It is hilarious to watch. And not, like, unintentionally. Like, they have a lot of intentional gags, but it's played like a Looney Tunes movie.
I definitely get that referenced. Yeah. But yeah, that's
Do you have a pick?
I think I'm rethinking my pick now.
Yeah, sorry, I gave like 3 different categories after your question. But yeah, bad movies that
I think that like if we're talking about just movies so bad they're good. I mean, I have a whole list of them because I'm an avid Mystery Science Theater watcher. So, I mean, I guess out of all of those, if you want something real bad, I'm going to go with the classic Mono's Hands of Fate. But I think that if I was going to choose something, I would say watch Kung Fury or Turbo Kid. They're both made to be like those bad movies. I don't know how well they did, but I thoroughly enjoyed them. It's like they took that whole bad movie template and made a movie out of it, and it was actually really enjoying.
Yeah, I haven't seen. I feel like I've heard of Turbo Kid, and I watched 2 MST 3K. I've been watching them for a couple years now. It's hilarious, and actually on Twitch now they have a 24/7 running of MST3K, which I find like I've been able to actually, because I watch streams while playing single player games, and I can watch that as well. So if you're ever interested, I mean, you can just find it on Twitch and just see how you like it. It's definitely, it may not be for everybody, but it is quite hilarious. But their most popular episode, which I think was their first, it's the most popular bad movie. Yeah, Mono's Hands of Fate. There's so much in that movie. I've been meaning to watch the whole thing.
It definitely wasn't their first episode that they did, but
oh yeah, no, yeah, it's their first. They have it as their first episode. If you go to like their greatest hit seasons that they used to have on Netflix, yeah, wasn't their first movies like the Godzilla movies?
I'm not 100% sure what their first movie was, but I know the first movie I ever saw them do was The Crawling Eye or The Crawling Hand. And that is back when TV's Frank wasn't even there. It was the other mad scientist, Josh, and Joel was there. Josh was doing the voice of Tom Servo, and Trace was doing the voice of Crow. And then Josh left, don't know where he went. And then in came TV's Frank. In came I can't even remember his name now. But in came the new voice of Tom Servo, who ended up sticking around as Tom Servo for quite a while.
I love Tom Servo. He's my favorite.
Yeah, he definitely he had some growing pains when they switched voices because he kept trying to be Josh, but then he found his own groove. That's when he became cool.
I think my picks are definitely movies that were intentionally bad, or at least if they weren't, they fooled me into thinking that they were intentionally bad. I'm going to go with Crybaby. If you've never seen it, Johnny Depp. It's a great, bad movie. And then another one, I think people would argue with me and say it's not a bad movie, that it's a great movie. And I enjoy the movie immensely, but I also acknowledge that it's not exactly a cinema masterpiece, and that's Knights of Badassdom.
No, that was good.
See, I knew it.
But no. But I'm with you. I'm in your court.
Yeah, I mean it's a bad movie, but I absolutely love it. Peter Dinklage gets to come back as a hero from beyond the grave and slay a demon. It's amazing. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it.
No, I haven't seen it. I'm surprised. Yeah, I feel like if I have heard that title, it would definitely stick with me. This isn't to mix up with the best Oscar winner, is it?
No, it's So you can find it on Amazon. It's Knights of Badassdom. It's a group of guys who LARP on the weekends, live action role play, and one of the guys is also in a metal band and like recently broke up with his girlfriend, so he's in a bad spot. He hasn't LARPed in forever, so his old LARP group drags him out to LARP and is like, "Hey, you're gonna have a great time. Come LARP with us. Now that you're not with her anymore, she can't stop you. Let's go LARP." And they find this book that ends up being like a real spell book, and they choose to cast their spells from it, and they end up accidentally summoning a demon. And I won't give away the ending, but it's fantastic, and it's got Peter Dinklage as one of the LARPers, and he's great. He gets into the role entirely, like he does with every role he's in.
Was this his Game of Thrones audition tape?
It could have been.
Could have been,
definitely.
Yeah. So, what do you think? What qualities do you think some of these movies have that takes it from beyond, hey, this is a great movie, or this is a bad movie, or what do you think takes it into that territory where, no, you have to watch this movie, this is a must-see? What makes you... I mean, even another way to phrase that question, I guess, even though it could be two separate questions, so feel free to answer them separately. I mean, your whole podcast is about combing over these movies that like are some of the best movies ever, or a list of movies that people say you have to see. What makes you decide? What helps you decide what goes on that list?
Okay, I'll take
Do you want me to take it? As I thought you were going.
Oh no, we kind of had a standoff going on. I'll take it. So let's say a must-see film. Like one of the most important things about it is originality and uniqueness to the film. Also, just being a solid good film, because you can be. Let's talk about The Godfather, for instance, because Godfather is known to be pretty much the film's greatest movie ever. On IMDb, it's number 2 and 3 for part 1 and part 2, and one of the things that made the movie so great is it was like one of the first films to really capitalize on the mafia, but not so much the mafia just being this band of criminals, but the mafia being a family, which is something that we see now in almost all gangster films, is how you get your audience to like this anti-hero or anti-villain in these movies. But there could have been another movie before Godfather that also had a mafia that worked like a family and were, and the audience liked them. But if it wasn't made as such a great movie, then no one's going to talk about it. They're just going to kind of look back at Godfather, and they're going to talk about, God. They may reference that other movie, but hey, Godfather was still an excellently executed movie. You can also even look at it with bands. What makes certain bands so great? One of my favorite artists, Led Zeppelin, and I don't know. I feel sometimes there's a bit of controversy there because they did combine blues and rock, and that's what makes them unique, and that's how they became like this band that's going to be known for all of time. But they did take some of their movies from blues musicians. There's even the controversy that some of the musicians were, not magicians, musicians. Musicians were black, and because they were black, they didn't get that that stardom, that appearance. But you can at least reference back to that. But again, it's about that uniqueness there and just making a good quality film. Like I said with Top Gun, Top Gun isn't not a great movie. It's the story's not great, and they don't wrap up a lot of things. That's the main issue with it. But it was still unique for its time. It still holds up today for some of the things that it had done. Having jets flying around, having kind of this bromance, having a war movie. This was like the first war movie, and it's one of the few war movies that, for overall, it paints us in a good light. There's nothing you can really look at and be like, but that's a bit rough, or that was tragic in it. And that's what makes the movie unique. And so I would say a must-see movie is an original and unique movie that is a overall solid film, and it averages out as a solid film.
There's also must-see movies in specific demographics, and you're talking about horror. This is a must-see for horror genre. This is a must-see for a specific audience. So we're going to be doing some episodes for Pride Month. So this is a specific must-see film that relates to the LGBT community. When you look at lists that are very if you look on Google and just type in what's the best films of all time, it's going to be very Western centric. So, I think that we need to look at international films. We need to look at all these other films that are considered must-sees in different circles rather than just, the Academy American ideology of what is a must-see film.
Yeah, definitely the genres are a big thing and separate categories, because there may be certain movies I may say this is a must-see horror film, but I'm not going to say this is a must-see film outside of all film. And another thing I would add when it comes to originality and uniqueness is emphasis on film technique as well. A lot of French New Wave brought in a lot of different film techniques, and those movies alone are something that should be seen just to see like the pioneer of this technique, or Steven Spielberg with his dolly zooms, or we're talking about Edgar Wright with his crash zooms. Luckily, they're also just really good movies, but it's something that you can see. Like French New Wave, when it came to guerrilla filmmaking, those are movies that you can go ahead and watch and just appreciate just for the innovation that they used alone. And I will also say it. Oh, go ahead.
I'll say Top Gun with its in-flight camera sequences.
I would say that
it was unique and it was new for the time, and it still holds up.
Well, I think Star Wars did it before. I would just say the change that Top Gun gave it was that there was the looking round. Like, you really did feel like you were more in the cockpit. But I believe Star Wars did it before. But again, it was like straightforward looking. So sometimes
and green screen, right?
Yeah, a lot of green screen. So sometimes it's just coming. It's sometimes
that
it's
actual in air.
I can say, as someone who actually served aboard the USS Enterprise, where Top Gun was filmed, they don't let you forget that it's a must-see movie. And like during the announcements or when they talk about how great the ship is, they always mention that Top Gun was filmed there. And when you're on a deployment, they actually have a few on-ship television channels. Obviously, you're not reaching like the antennas and cable and everything like that from the shore. So they basically make their own TV channels where they show different movies. One of the channels is just a live feed of the flight deck 24/7. But one of the channels on the USS Enterprise is Top Gun 24/7. Top Gun. When the movie ends, they start it again. So yeah, they love that movie. Let me tell you.
Talking about also another example of kind of playing on top of a film technique. We were talking about Edgar Wright while we were recording that, and how he uses a lot of cuts. But we did first see those cuts in the French New Wave, so we do make a reference saying like, hey, again, like it did come from this, but man, Edgar Wright really capitalized it. So both, are must see for kind of the same technique, but different uses.
It's always going to be subjective, though, right? I mean, like, we're not talking about, like, objectively, these are the must-see movies. There's a lot of agreement across a lot of different communities that, like, even where movies where people don't necessarily like a movie that a lot of other people like, they'll even agree that it's a must-see movie. But it's always going to be subjective. I personally think that a must-see movie comes from a movie that, after I watch it, I immediately want to watch it again. Or even after watching it twice, I want to watch it multiple times. Like, I want to keep watching that movie. Or even if it's not a movie that I want to see multiple times, it'll be a movie that will reach me somewhere emotionally that movies don't normally for me. Because there's just something in my head. I mean, like, I guess I just don't have a huge suspension of disbelief where, like, I'm always aware that I'm watching a movie. So it makes it harder for me to get into a lot of the emotional scenes sometimes. So when a movie can actually manage to drag that out of me, when it can immerse me so much that like I actually emotionally connect with a character or a scene, if a movie can make me cry or give me some sort of feeling that I don't get from other movies, that movie immediately goes on my must-see movie list.
I feel like I'm kind of the opposite of you, actually, because that's how I know that I don't like a movie that went bad. Because I'm pretty good at maintaining that suspension of disbelief. But as soon as I'm out of that and my mind's just trailing off, like thinking about my to-do list, the errands I need to run, did I leave the oven on? That's when I'm like, oh yeah, I need to get back to this movie that I'm watching. If I'm able to do that, then that usually is a sign that I'm not a big fan of that movie.
Also say, and this kind of goes into how we pick our list, because there's must-see films and there's you gotta watch this films. And I would say must-see is more like it's more like the historic films that you have to watch as someone who appreciates film. And I say someone who appreciates film, and that's why during our podcast we say, is this just for the general audience, or is this for cinephiles, or both? Because not everybody's going to like the historic must-sees. Like, as much as we love the French New Wave, I'm not going to bring in a general audience member and be like, hey, you have to watch this film. And when it comes to you got to see this film, those are films that are good, and sometimes it falls into like the more current ones. Like if I was to say, hey, the films you got to see from 2021, they may not be the ultimate must-see films, but there's still films that I think are really great films. They may not do anything unique or original, or they do, and it's just something that's not going to stand with time, but it's a movie that you have to go and see. And I would say, it's something like when we're picking our movies, the second part of your question, one thing that we look at, the first thing that we do, honestly, is search the internet. And see, there's all these lists out there of what is the must-see film for this genre, or there's even a list of the 1,001 movies to see before you die, and or you have IMDb's top 250, which actually right now is kind of, I don't know, I'm not agreeing with their list so much anymore. I feel like a lot of people are putting in their personal opinions now. But yeah, we do scour the internet, and we cross-reference lists and say, hey, like this movie keeps coming up. There's something that we should probably go ahead and check out. We look at the awards that it has. If it was a Oscar winner, Best Picture, like I forget if it was the picture winner, but $1 Million Baby. $1 Million Baby is a movie that people were saying is a must-see film. I disagree with that. I don't think it's a must-see film at all. I think it's just the ending that got people for its time, but it doesn't, it's not that shocking of a twist anymore. And I say time a lot. It's like you kind of have to look at like how's this movie going to hold up in a couple years, and then also looking at it as a retrospect from the time that it was made. Like how is this film compared to the years before it as well? So yeah, it is subjective. It's definitely subjective. It's like any other piece of art or writing out there. It is a bit subjective, and there's a bit kind of, if you want to look at it logically, there's a bit of a formula there. I know Robin Williams would disagree that there's a way to break it down in an equation, but it's almost there.
Honestly, for me, a must-see movie is a movie that has made me feel something that I want to share. So, like, I know it's hard for me to be able to share emotions with other people. You know, I can tell people how I'm feeling. I can tell people how something made me feel. But if there is something that has made me feel something and I can expose someone to this and they get to feel the same thing I did, yeah. That is how I would share that.
So, like, if you're in a relationship and you need to break up, do you put on Blue Valentine and just kind of consistently look over at the person like,
I would. I would. But you know.
Yeah, no, I understand that too. And
well, how about this? I'll say I have done that, except a different kind of movie in the exact opposite way.
Well, we got to hear the story.
What?
Was it Magic Mike? Did you put on Magic Mike?
I mean, you know, I put on something very, very. It was a period piece. It was very sexy, very sexually charged in a way, and it definitely got the message across.
I'm trying to think of sexy period pieces. I know the series.
I mean, do you want me to tell you what it was?
Can you give me a second to think? Like,
Yeah.
I just want them all to go through my head. I'm like, man, what is? I'm thinking The Favorite. That was a recent one. That was a bit scandalous.
I don't think you'll ever get it.
All right, go for it.
It's the Marie Antoinette movie with Kirsten Dunst.
Oh, I love that movie. That's one that's not very well received, but I really like.
Hey, but it gets the message across. But I think it's also, you know, films can be used to express, like you said, a general emotion, but they can also be a way to express a certain topic that you yourself aren't able to explain, or maybe you need an example. For instance, if you have a mental illness and you're trying to have somebody understand like what it's like to live with that mental illness, you can put on a movie that shows that emotion. You can put on a movie that really depicts depression. The one that comes to my head first, Caitlin, you recently put on your watch list, and that's 2 Days, 1 Night with Marion. I don't know how to pronounce the last name.
I think it's Cotier.
Cotier, yes, French. So it could be it can be a great way to say like, hey, this is kind of what it's like. Or, you know, my favorite example, it's actually a TV series. I don't want to go too much into TV, but BoJack Horseman is a great way to introduce people into looking at a variety of mental issues, but easily bring somebody into it with the comedy that's there and the animation.
Yeah, you had to choose a heavy one, didn't you?
yeah, that one may be a little heavy for people.
Yeah,
like I said, that's a TV series, so it's
eases you into it though. It eases
a little,
you into it
but
a little bit.
if you can relate to certain things of that show, it does hit hard.
It does. It definitely does.
The first season actually switches up pretty quick. Like, there's two moments, but man, towards that end, you're like, oh, this is what that show's about.
Mm-hmm. I think I think I talked about this a little when we were recording for your podcast, but it's another reason I recommend Baby Driver to people, because I have tinnitus, and so does Baby, and if you watch that movie with headphones, they let you know what it's like to have tinnitus, and I can use that movie to show people what that's like. I mean, it's not the same thing; it's not an emotional thing or a mental issue or anything like that, but it does let people know what it's like to deal with that particular disability day to day.
And it's and I don't know, I never noticed that with that movie, but I also have tinnitus, so I don't know if it was just like I can't hear the ringing over my own ringing.
I will say I didn't know it until somebody else pointed it out to me. And
you said you had to wear headphones too.
Yeah, you have to wear headphones, and then somebody else pointed it out to me, And I was like, oh, really? And then I went back and watched it with headphones. And then, even then, I had to listen close for it because like, I got my own ringing. But yeah, it's definitely there.
And we see it more in current film, and that's another thing too I want to mention is that current films can be must-see films as well. Sometimes almost instantly. I would say like the instant one is Get Out. Get Out was instantly like a must-see for history, and it proved itself right off the bat just to be completely original and unique with some of just the most fantastic writing out there. And then kind of playing off of Get Out, social issues. We see a lot of social issues right now. We see a lot of racial social issues, and there's movies depicting that, and they're kind of portraying it in a way that making people see who are not of that, of a certain color, seeing those films be like, oh, that's what it's like. And sometimes people may not see it, and sometimes you gotta shatter that glass for them. One of my favorite Disney movie, and it's another current one, is Zootopia. And I think Zootopia does a good job of kind of hiding its racial social commentary, but if then you're definitely going to see it. And some people may look at that movie like a straight movie until you start kind of pulling things from it, like, hey, well, it's actually, this is about this. This is what this in joke means. So it's very interesting. I'm trying to think. There's another movie recently that kind of put in light, like, hey, this is what it's kind of like to be a person of color, or this is what it means to actually have a certain privilege. And when I say certain privilege, I'm not trying to hide the idea, like I'm not trying to hide the word white privilege. No, there's multiple privileges.
Sure.
So that's why I say certain privileges.
I think we might even touched on that a little bit during our representation episode, but like, yeah, a movie can instantly become must-see if it can showcase something that hasn't been showcased in media before. Like when Black Panther came out, and it was one of the first, real black superhero movie. And then, a whole generation of kids got to see a superhero who looks like them on the screen. And that's important enough to make it a must-see movie.
Yeah, actually, Kayla and I were discussing, like, are there any of the superhero movies, the MCU films that are must-see? And, yeah, I kind of overlooked it, but maybe Black Panther is that must-see for people. But I don't know, I feel like a lot of Black Panther, what makes it must-see is everything that happened around it and how it changed. It literally changed history. So, yeah, actually, I would say Black Panther is another must-see film, if not something that needs to be looked back at, but also an instant must-see film.
It's also a good introduction to actually a really fantastic genre called Afrofuturism. It's actually getting really big in sci-fi right now. It's obviously been around for a while, but through
Things
publishers or whatnot, yeah. But and that's kind of why I like how things are becoming now. It's letting things like this come out, and Afrofuturism is wonderful. In fact, actually, there's a D&D supplement coming out that is not futurism, obviously, but because it is D&D, but it is focused more on, because like D&D is usually like a European kind of thing. This is focusing more on things from like the Middle East and Africa and stuff like that.
It looks really good too.
Oh, so good.
You're definitely seeing that in literary circles as well, especially in the fantasy genre, because, before, like you said, it was very much European-centric. But I think we're definitely expanding that and seeing new stories, even if it is fantasy, but that's, based on those other cultures.
Mm-hmm.
Fans are not liking that, though. As we've seen with the Lord of the Rings trailer recently, they all up in arms because they're like, yeah, it's European, and it's like, is it really changing anything? I feel like that's a whole nother 2 hours.
There were no black dwarves. There were no dwarves, idiot.
Yep.
Yeah.
And like, let's all forget about the Duragar.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. There's always going to be somebody who's going to be angry, right? I mean, like, it's just, we can go right back to Black Panther, and the moment that somebody said, like, oh, look, it's a superhero movie, and during the entire superhero movie, there's only like 2 white people in it. And then people got up in arms, and they're like, oh, imagine if they did that opposite. Imagine if they made something about some sort of Scandinavian all-white superhero casted movie that only had like one black guy in it. And it's like, well, you mean Thor?
Yeah, like, do you mean a lot of properties?
Yeah. And it's like, yeah, they do that all the time, and people don't get up in arms about it. People are always going to find something to complain about. And I think to take it back to that D&D supplement that's coming out, one of the focuses of that D&D supplement is it's entirely people of color who wrote everything in that book. Every story in that book, every, character option, everything that they add in that book is all written by people of color, and people had something to say about that. They were like, oh, it's been traditionally, a hobby who's meant for everybody. Why you have to exclude white authors just because it's, supposed to be about this? And it's like, come on, man. There's plenty of white authors in D&D. Like, it's full of them.
The funniest part about Black Panther are the people that are like, oh, Black Panther, how'd they feel if they made a superhero called White Panther? And then, like, you get to the end credits of Black Panther, and we get introduced to White Wolf. And it's like, well, there you go.
There he is.
There you go. God. Fucking people.
People always want to make an issue out of something that's not there. People want to be oppressed so bad. It's crazy.
Yeah, meanwhile, we're getting a Black Panther sequel, and I can't wait, so...
Yeah, I'm excited to see what they did with that. Like we said, it's kind of it is a bit subjective, and it's something that you need to. It's not really something you can so much state as a fact of what is must see. We just talked about there's so many things that go into it, and there's also even subgenres of must see. There's different time periods of must see. There's different political, emotional, social reasons to watch films. So I think it's just when we bring in a must-see film, it isn't so much, to make it short, we say, hey, this is a must-see, but we also bring in a good argument of why this is a must-see or why it's considered a must-see film.
I can definitely see the point that you were making before. Like, I can't remember exactly how you worded it, but you have two different kinds of, like, you have to see this movie and you must see this movie. Like, I see it like how you broke it down is, if you are teaching a film class, this is a syllabus of all the movies that you should watch if you want to get an A in this class. Those are your must-see movies. And then you got to see this movie. Those movies are the ones that you sat in and you got to a big point and you cried and it just made you feel amazing and you're just like, I have to share this with somebody. Like, I have to share this with everybody. So that's kind of how I broke that down. I don't know if that's exactly where you were going with that.
That's a great breakdown of it. That's spot on. And I think like the horror genre is probably the biggest one. When you look at must-see films that happen to be horror, and then you look into the horror films and it's like, hey, these are films you gotta watch. You like horror? You gotta watch these horrors, or these are the must-see horrors. And I say horror because horror is probably the smallest and largest genre. It's the smallest genre in good movies. It's the largest genre in just everybody making movies for it. When you look at B movies, I even said it, most of them are horror, and horror just has this very niche community. When we look at movie podcasts, you're gonna see a lot of them are about horror. So that within itself, there's not many must-see films that happen to be horror. And then we look at horror, there's not many must-see horror films, but there's a lot of, you gotta watch this. Mm-hmm. And usually it's because something just crazy that you never seen happen on screen. Like, what was the movie that we watched? Caitlin, the French one with the pregnant woman?
Inside,
yeah.
Oh, that was insane.
That movie is insane. Is it a must-see? No. But do you gotta see it? Yes.
It's funny though, because it's like we're talking about horror and must see. Let's look at just the Evil Dead movies.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, depending on the genre, depending on who you're talking to, it's like, oh, are you a filmmaker that's just getting started out and you don't have a lot of money? Watch the first Evil Dead movie. You're going to get some ideas. You want a horror movie that's going to make you laugh? Watch the Army of Darkness or Evil Dead 2, or even, hey, you want to see what you can do with a little bit more money once you get recognized by a studio? Watch Evil Dead 2. You want to see some fucked up shit? Watch the new Evil Dead. You know, you get glass in the eye in that one. Oh no, not glass in the eye. That's Brightburn. You get a needle in the eye in Evil Dead.
You got a lot of messed up things in Evil Dead, and going off Evil Dead, you know, another you gotta see it. It sometimes plays off of what you like. So if I would say Evil Deads are must see films. Each one of them has a reason that makes them a must watch film. Army of Darkness is probably the one that's hardest to argue, but there's a lot of reasons there. But if you those films are must see, and then a movie that you gotta see is one that came out recently, Malignant. Malignant. I mean, a lot of reasons that make that movie just something you gotta watch. Is something that Evil Dead did and did better as well. I would say. Again, that may be a bit subjective. I think most people would agree, but you may not have had Malignant without Evil Dead. But Malignant, yeah, it's something you gotta see, whether you like it or not. It's something you gotta see.
Yeah, Malignant's great. It's, James Wan is a brilliant horror director, and I would agree that would be a must-see because I think it's starting a shift in horror. If you talk here in horror circles, that they're talking a lot about Malignant because it's kind of bringing back the campy horror. Because for so long we haven't really had a lot of campy horror in the mainstream. So I definitely would agree that's a must-see. I really like Malignant.
Speaking of messed up things you just gotta see, why don't you scroll on down to the description and check out our link for T-Villain. T-Villain is a t-shirt site where you'll find a killer limited edition t-shirt being sold for $13 for only 24 hours. The following 24 hours will feature a new design, and so on and so forth. They choose the most ingenious designs that reflect everything evil and villainy, as well as works pertaining to anything artistic, pulp style, lowbrow, pop culture, TV, movies, music, video games, comics, etc., and all cool things and evil, basically. Today, the design, as of while we're recording this, happens to be a punk rock Ariel. But if that's something that you would like, it's too late. By the time you're listening to the podcast, you can't get that t-shirt anymore. It's gone. So
I was looking.
Why don't you go ahead, bookmark that link, check it every day, because every day there'll be a new t-shirt that you can only get that day. It's one of the best ways to help out Casters Guild. So check out that link below.
One thing with the horror genre, though, it's definitely a fan base that you kind of have to walk a careful line with. Horror fans are very, very passionate, especially when it comes to what is true horror, how does sequel go, and it's also a very gatekeepy fan base as well. You're not a true horror fan unless you've seen this, and so it's kind of a fine line. And I think sometimes, we kind of, on our podcast, we're going to give our opinion either way. So one of the films that we most recently watched was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I know that our opinions are completely different than the general consensus of the horror community. But, we do our best to recognize why these are must-sees in that community, even if we don't necessarily agree that they are.
So I have a very similar situation. So there is a movie that I will recommend to just about anybody, especially anybody in my friends group. But I hate it. I hate it with a burning passion. But I'll recommend it to any of my friends because most of my friends love it. And if they haven't seen it and they're my friend, they'll probably love it. Repo the Genetic Opera.
I love that movie.
I hate it. But I'll recommend it to anybody. I will say this is a must-see movie. Just don't watch it with me.
I think we have that on our for Shameless, actually.
Repo? The opera?
The Genetic Opera.
I know Repo Man.
No, it's a big cult classic.
Oh,
Huge.
It's a
I
musical.
heard it.
Yeah.
Huge, yeah.
Like when they say the Genetic Opera, they aren't kidding. Like it's a musical. It's an opera even.
Now there is another movie called Repo that is almost about the same thing, but it has Jude Law in it, and it's amazing, and you should definitely watch it.
Yeah, there's another Repo, which I think is a cult classic. It has Emilio.
That would be the Repo Men that you were talking about.
Yeah, Repo Man. Emilio, I forget his name. He was part of the Breakfast
Estevez?
Club.
Emilio
Estevez.
nephew of Joe Estevez. Yeah. Oh, and then there's,
I'll say there's all the rest of his family who's pretty big.
Once upon a time, it only took $1,000 to hire Joe Estevez to be in a movie.
Wow.
Yeah, we looked into it. I'm still flipping through movies that are so bad it's good. I'm seeing like Anaconda.
Oh God.
Howard the Duck, the original one, because he doesn't have another movie, so I don't know why I made that differentiation.
It's like, isn't there only...
I would disagree with Howard the Duck. I watched Howard the Duck and I was bored. It wasn't that bad.
Bad.
It was.
It's so
It's
bad.
bad, but I don't know. I didn't find it.
I'm not
fun
agreeing.
bad during the whole time.
I'm not agreeing with the list. I'm just noticing that this is on the list.
Look,
well, like a movie that's so bad it's good. Demolition Man.
I've actually heard that one is. If you watch it now, it's actually good, like solid. There's a reviewer I watched, and they put that movie on for their bad movie roast, and they were watching it and they had to actually switch their opinion. Like, this actually movie, especially now, it holds up.
Because of Wesley Snipes, though. Come on.
They were talking about like the themes and everything that was going on with it. They're like, maybe it was ahead of his time, possibly.
It was. Oh my gosh, it was. Yes, absolutely.
Before
I would
we
love
get
to see them remake it.
Before we get too far away from it, you know how little kids, like toddlers or little kids, they have those movies that they need to watch over and over and over again. Like, it becomes their favorite movie. Like, they do not turn that movie off.
I don't.
My mom tells me, and like, of course I was too young to remember, my mom tells me that movie for me was Howard the Duck.
God, I'm so sorry, Rick Small.
I would have given you up as a child.
Right. And then, like, I didn't even remember seeing it. And I saw it again later, like, as an adult, and I'm like, God, that movie's terrible. And my mom's staring daggers at me while I'm saying that it's terrible. Because she's like, yeah, it is, isn't it? Now imagine watching it like 7 times a day, every day. And then I was also like, Mom, you let me watch that when I was a kid? Like, how did it become one of my favorite? Like, how did I see it the first time? Because that is not a movie for kids.
I guess it's hidden.
I guess it'd be kind of hard for you to go into a restaurant and order duck breast.
I forgot that was a thing.
Oh yeah,
that's
those ducks have straight up memories.
Memories.
And why was everything like a quack something like quack foos when I bang my head on the table? I was like, it's not like humans say human foo.
I hate to say it, but I think that is also straight from the comics too, though. I think quack foo was straight from the comics. I'm not trying to make it better. That kind of makes it better, but
I'll slam my head on the comic as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I bring that up because I know my mom listens to this podcast and she has questioned things I've said before. And like, I just said that Howard the Duck was bad. And I knew if I didn't bring it up, she was gonna come at me again and be like, "Yeah, it is bad, isn't it?" Yes, Mom. I acknowledge it's bad, and I'm sorry.
Yeah. You know what my true bad but good movie is that we talked about on a podcast, and Brian's gonna hate me. Batman Forever. That was my Batman movie growing up, and I absolutely love it. I love everything about it.
Please let me step in and make it all better. I think I've talked about this on the podcast before.
Is it about how it's a bisexual allegory? Because I learned that, and I absolutely love it.
No.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so you have Batman and Batman Returns, right? That's Tim Burton. He's doing his thing. Batman's dark, Batman's gritty, silly still, but whatever. So you have Tim Burton, who did his thing, who has never read a comic in his life, his words. And then Joel Schumacher steps in, right? What happens? You get a lot of color in there. It gets really campy. It gets really silly. Why? Because Joel Schumacher watched the Batman TV show, and he was making a movie based off of those Batman TV shows. Mm-hmm. You watch those original Batman TV shows and then go back and watch those new Batman movies, the Batman and Robin and Batman
Batman
Forever, then Batman and Robin.
Batman Forever, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You watch those two, you're going to feel way better about those movies, believe me.
No, is that the reason for the bat nipples? Like, is because he saw like the spandex suits and saw like the nipples pop through, and he was like, "My bat suit needs nipples."
Possibly.
I don't know about all that, but I have heard that, like, yeah, he looked at the 1960s and especially for Batman and Robin. I've heard that argument, and it's also, I mean, Batman Returns. The reason they didn't want Tim Burton back is they're like, we can't sell toys like this. We can't. Nobody wants a Danny DeVito nose biting action figure. No, even though that sounds pretty dope.
I will say, as the father of a small child who rushed out and bought the Paul Dano Riddler figure as soon as it came out, I will have to say that someone would buy that Danny DeVito Penguin figure. I'm telling you right
But
now.
is it a child? Is it a child?
Yes.
Is the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's a 12-year-old
Oh, okay.
girl.
Oh, I thought you said you went. Okay.
No. Yeah, she went out as soon as we watched this thing. The next day, she forced me to go out to Target, buy the Paul Dano figure for her.
Paul Dano. Everyone loves Paul Dano.
That is true. I wouldn't mind a Paul Dano action figure.
Yeah. She has him. She takes him everywhere, and he has a little toothpick with a pride flag on it.
Oh.
But I would say Batman Forever, though. I've seen the first episode of the Batman TV series. Found it pretty funny, especially the shark spray is hilarious. But Batman Forever, my main issue with it was just so loud and like everything from the colors to the just to the camera work, just being so up close to the building is suffocating. And I grew up liking Batman Forever, and I was excited to watch it again. I was excited to see like Jim Carrey. I'm a fan of Jim Carrey as well for the most part. But this was unhinged, and it didn't help that Jim Carrey was just completely insane. But even the straight man couldn't stay straight. Like Tommy Lee Jones was just completely insane as well. And I hated this film, and I wanted to like it so much. And I was like, all right, maybe he's gonna turn around. Maybe he's gonna turn around. I was like, I gotta get out of here.
I love it.
I finished the film, but it was so bad. It was. God, like it's crazy how loud it is. Like, I mean, you want to talk about like a claustrophobic movie? That's what it was for me. And yeah, even knowing about like, I'm not saying it's just too goofy. Just so many things annoyed me about that film.
I love it. I love it. It's unhinged. It's my favorite.
I do have to say that one of my favorite things came out of that, and that was the Blacklight gang. Like
Nope, that annoyed me as well.
Oh, I loved them.
That actually just annoys
You're a
me.
hater.
Sometimes. The
Hater.
80s always had that street gang that was just like, I don't know what they were doing. Like, they were always getting done with a rave, and they loved jumping around and jumping on things and wooing.
I think that all comes from the Warriors, probably, which is a
I
fantastic
love the Warriors
movie.
though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I dig the Warriors, but
All them
No,
them gangs that are on theme and on brand.
yeah, but I mean they all had like a separate theme and things, but it seemed like in the 80s you had your henchmen that were pretty much all the same. Like we talk about Tim Burton and Joel Schumacher, they may have been totally different. They pretty much had the same gang. Only thing that Joel Schumacher did was give his glow sticks.
Okay.
Why, Caitlin? Why you gotta bring that movie back in my life? I was recovering.
Whatever it
I
is
forgot all about that.
Whatever it is you don't like or do like about that movie, honestly, like Batman Forever, I think Batman and Robin just does it more. So, I mean, like, if you
I'm
like,
not planning to watch that anytime soon.
yeah, if you hated Batman Forever for those reasons, you're gonna hate Batman and Robin even more. And if you liked Batman Forever for those reasons, you're gonna like Batman Robin even more. I mean, like, they just take. I feel like Batman Forever was already turned up to 11, and like for Batman and Robin, they just broke the dial off. They're just like, we're just gonna crank it all the way with all the
Definitely.
Arnold Schwarzenegger ice puns and the
All
Batman
the
credit
ice
card.
puns.
Do you know what killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age. I don't think that's true, Victor.
It's also not really a pun. You're just stating an incorrect fact.
Yeah, it's more of a reference to Ice, if anything. Also, the two villains that should never team up together.
Yeah, seriously.
I don't know what their plan was.
Oh man, we really derailed on that one, didn't we?
Hey, you know what? That's how the podcast goes. Just
Yes,
saying.
it is. There's a reason we have a guild train. Okay, so I think this is kind of along the same lines. So we have our must-see great movie. We have our must-see, bad movie. what would be your comfort movie? What's a movie that like you can always put on and watch when you don't know what else to watch or you don't want to think too hard? What's your comfort movie?
I'll say I have two. The first one is Pride and Prejudice, the 2005 version. I really like that. Pride and Prejudice is a favorite book of mine. I love Jane Austen. And then secondly would be Jurassic Park. I will say I have not watched it much recently, but that for me has been my favorite movie since I was 3 years old. I have very good memories with my grandfather. He's the one that introduced me to it. We saw all the movies in theaters together. I haven't watched it recently because I just haven't brought myself since my grandfather passed away to watch it. But it was definitely my movie that I would just, make some popcorn. I would just sit down and I'd put it on. And I would just, I'd be immersed in it every single time. But it really was my true comfort movie.
I would say for me, I also have two. My first and it's actually my all-time favorite film, which is actually a pretty hard thing to do when you've seen so many movies. And I'm not saying this is the best movie. It is a must-see, and that's Lost in Translation. I really enjoy Lost in Translation. It does have some hard-hitting themes depending like where you're at. But honestly, if you're looking for a comfort movie, you may not be in the best of places. And yeah, it's just a great film, and I feel like every time I watch it, I may not see anything new, but I'll connect on some level, whether it be emotional or just like I just admire this more at this time for whatever reason. Every time that I watch it, I try to watch that movie at least once a year. The other movie that I find comforting, maybe a bit cynical, is either Cabin in the Woods or Scream. They kind of have a lot of similar themes. They're both meta horror movies, and yeah, Cabin in the Woods especially. Like, I just have fun with that movie. Yeah, I have fun with that movie just throughout the entire thing, and I always get a nice big. There's not too many movies where I'll get like an actual physical smile across my face instantly, as I did with Cabin in the Woods when those elevators open up and just complete mayhem spilled out almost literally. It's just again, it's a bit cynical. There's a lot of monsters and murder in it, but it's fun. They weren't real, I hope.
I definitely feel like comfort horror movies for me is like its own separate category. Just being such a horror lover, but I am. It's just there are go-to comfort horror movies that you need to watch every year.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that I have a few. We'll go with my normal Casters Guild 3. I'd say my main one is Princess Bride. I can watch that, just if I'm feeling down, if I'm feeling good, if I'm feeling, any kind of feeling going through. If I'm feeling sick, that's like the perfect, sit there with some crackers and some soup and just have a nice day, fall asleep while watching it. It's I don't know. It's there's a reason why it's so far up there on my list of things that like my favorite movies. And then I would say that It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood is a more recent comfort movie of mine that it's really emotional for me watching that. And then a very niche comfort movie of mine is A Very Merry Christmas. And I watch that every year, but I only watch it once.
I think for me, I less do comfort movies than I do comfort television shows. So like comfort movies, you could ask me the exact same question every day and I'd give you a different answer. So I guess a guilty pleasure of mine when it comes to comfort movies would be Dodgeball. I love that movie. It's just quotable and funny, and nobody makes me bleed my own blood is like one of my favorite things that anybody has ever said in a movie. Scott Pilgrim versus the World was it for a while. Like I watched that movie over and over and over again, just as background noise when I was doing anything around the house or whatever. But now that you bring it up, I think I'm going to start watching The Princess Bride when I'm having a bad day or when I'm sick. I think I think back on that movie fondly, but like when I actually think of how many times I watched it, it's not that many. I think it would be a perfect thing to watch if I were having a bad day or feeling sick. So I think I might start doing that.
Yeah, before you said Scott Pilgrim, I was also thinking, for some reason, after you said Bleed My Own Blood, I was thinking Scott Pilgrim, and I thought, oh yeah, Scott Pilgrim is another one of my comfort movies and another must-see film.
Yeah, with the geek that I am, like the love letter it is to video games and, that kind of, for lack of a better word, hipster geek culture. It's just all around great. Indie music scene, that whole thing. And the soundtrack's amazing. I'd used to listen to that soundtrack on the way to work every day for quite a while.
So I thought it was funny because a lot of those songs in that soundtrack, I was like, man, these are just nonsense lyrics. Like, they don't make any sense. And then I realized I listened to Loser by Beck, and then it all made sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
That'll do it.
Okay. All right.
So I have a question. We talk about movies that we go back and rewatch for a number of reasons, whether it's comfort or just because it's great. Are there movie scenes that you may just pull up randomly? Like, there are movie scenes that you just maybe sitting down on your phone and you're like, let me go ahead and pull this up on YouTube.
Thinking about actually.
So there's a scene that I will just pop on for people, or if I want to cry, I will pop this on. And I will say that if you want to watch this scene, go ahead and pirate this movie if you want, or, look it up on YouTube. Just, don't pay for it. Don't do that. But it's a scene in the first Fantastic Beasts movie when they're saying goodbye to Jacob. Ugh, that kills me every time I watch it.
I don't know at what point in time that became a thing for you, but I remember the first time we saw. Tiffany is big. My wife Tiffany is big into mythical creatures, animals in general, and we were both big Harry Potter fans. So the moment they announced that movie, we knew we were going to go see it like as soon as it came out. And at that point, we honestly hadn't talked to Baron in quite some time. But when we saw that movie and we saw the character of Jacob, the first thing both of us thought of was Baron. And like after that movie, I like actually texted him and it was like, hey, this character is you. Like, you should go see this movie because this is you as a character. And now, like, I still see him, Baron, in that character. So, like, I can't separate the character from Baron at this point.
My memory, because I've seen that movie, but I don't remember which one is Jacob.
The Muggle.
Oh, okay.
Who owns the bake shop or wants to own the bake shop at that point.
Right. Yeah. Rough scene.
Oh, yeah.
But it was a good scene.
Because there are none like you.
Aw.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go cry.
Yeah, for me, it's I have to say there's a couple of different ranges. For me, just something to laugh at. It'll be it's going to be the Gremlins poker scene, not poker scene, the Gremlins bar scene. No, Caitlin, you haven't seen the Gremlins yet. I think we plan to watch it this year. There's a scene because Gremlins are known just to be getting into mischief, also being petty is another one. And this bar scene is just excellently done. It's just one visual gag after the other, from them ordering drinks, from them playing and cheating at poker, to one having this serious moment when he's listening to jazz music, enjoying his whiskey, and another gremlin just comes and ruins his moment. It's a hilarious scene. It's probably like the best visual gag scene out there, and I love just putting it on sometimes and just having a laugh, because again, it's just maybe one of those jokes will just hit with me a little bit harder that day. As a scene that I just like watching because it's so good is a movie not many people have seen. It's from one of the acclaimed directors out there, Paul Thomas Anderson, and it's the movie The Master, in which two great actors, Philip Seymour Hoffman and Joaquin Phoenix, are having an interview together, and their performance and the dialogue is fantastic, as you would expect from those two actors. And then another thing I like to do, especially if I'm in an airport and I'm just trying to kill some time before I got aboard, priority 1 is already up and I'm number 32. I like to watch some anime fight scenes or watch just some fight scenes. Talking about movies, live action. The Raid has some great fight scenes in between those two movies. There's some that I like to just put on and just watch.
Yes.
Mine is going to be super niche. Like I'm a D&D geek, and I hang out with other D&D geeks. And there's a movie called Gamers 2: Dorkness Rising. I think you can find it on Amazon now. But there's a scene where there's this guy who'd never played a bard character before and has no idea how to play a bard character, so like he just keeps dying over and over again. So rather than making his friends resurrect him, he actually like sat down and made 50 bard character sheets. So like when you go in, like the movie, half the movie is watching the players play the game, and half the movie is like their characters like in the game. And they're needing to do something with this warlock, and like the warlock is like just killing these bards one by one, and every time one of them dies he pulls out another character sheet and he's like, nope, I got another bard, I got another bard, I got another bard. And then like their wild mage needs a minute to cast a spell, but he doesn't have any cover, and the guy who's playing the bard is like, hide behind the wall of dead bards. And it's fantastic. I love it. And then a fight scenes that I will look up regularly. There is a movie called Chocolate about a girl who can mimic any fighting style or any move just by seeing it done. And so like she watches a Bruce Lee movie, and then all of a sudden she can fight like Bruce Lee. But the thing is, like, she literally mimics Bruce Lee. So she literally like thumbs her nose and like does like the stance, and then like does like the water, because that's what she sees him do. And like she sees a bunch of people doing a bunch of different types of kung fu. She watches a bunch of kung fu movies. So, and it's like this young preteen to teenage girl, and it's an amazing fight scenes all throughout that movie.
And just if I can interject real quick, for fight scenes, especially with the trend that was going on with Marvel TV shows, the old boy hallway scene. The old boy hallway scene.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, because Daredevil was taken from that.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta say, I love that, because one thing we were talking about while we were recording the Cornetto, the 3 flavors of Cornetto trilogy yesterday, I was talking about how I didn't like the editing, and I love fight scenes where it's a good choreograph. You can tell they're confident because they just put the camera down and then they just walk away. And they do that with Raid. I'll go back and watch the Daredevil fight scenes as well. DC actually took from it. There's at the time while I was watching Arrow, like I just watched the first 3 seasons. I think I gave up season 3, but they directly take from the famous Raid hallway scene as well.
Oh yeah, yep.
My scene that I always keep going back to, and it's one that me and our mutual friend Coleman share. He's been on our podcast before.
The elusive one.
Sorry, the elusive one. So a movie is Take Shelter. It's one of my favorite movies by director Jeff Nichols. It's starring Michael Shannon. And that movie is the epitome of a slow burn. It's very, very slow paced. And it builds. It builds and builds and builds and builds. And then at the end, within like the last 25 minutes or so of the movie, there's just an explosion of everything that movie was building up to. And I definitely recommend watching the whole movie so that you feel that effect. But sometimes Coleman and I will be like, all right, let's go watch the last 25 minutes of Take Shelter, just because it's just such good storytelling, it's good acting, it's just an explosive emotional moment, and it's great. It's great to watch. I will say, though, if I'm wanting to laugh, and I see it on Twitter, it makes the rounds like every other couple months or so, is the scene from Crazy Stupid Love, where it's revealed how everyone knows each other, and it's just one thing after another just keeps happening in a scene, and it's the comedy scene from that movie, and I just enjoy it, and I laugh every time.
That is actually, both of those are great ones. Granted, I don't think a 25-minute scene is a scene, but
It's the last 25 minutes of that movie. It's really like 2 scenes, but
yeah.
It's crazy.
At least 2 locations. Are there any movies that you say, like, this is a great movie and maybe a must-see and maybe a gotta-see, and you always plan to revisit it, or to visit it again, but it may just be a hard-hitting movie that you have to be in a very specific mood and you're not sure if you can watch that movie again?
Yeah. Yes. Oh, yes.
Go for it.
Midsommar.
Oh, God.
I think I could.
It's like
Look,
you just described that movie to a T for me.
Yeah.
I don't know how I managed to avoid spoilers or what that movie was about, but like the entire internet was like, "Oh, that this movie, like it's crazy, it's whatever." But like everybody was like, "Oh, do watch this movie. Don't watch this movie. This movie is crazy." And like, but I was like, "What? What is it? What? What?" And then finally, like, Tiffany started watching it while I was cooking dinner, and like I sat down and watched it with her, and oh my god, like it just like it hit so much harder because I had no idea what to expect other than the fact that like it was an insane movie. But like, yeah, that was nuts.
It's funny too because there's a meme that show. By the way, this movie put Florence Pugh on the map for me. But I'll
For a lot
watch
of
her.
people.
She's amazing.
She needs to be in everything now. But that there's a scene in the very, very end where she's in the flower crown and just smiling. And I saw a meme later, but this meme mimicked exactly what I was thinking in my head when I saw her in that flower crown. It was good for her. Good for her.
I didn't say that. I don't
I
know.
did.
I think at that point I was just like my jaw was still dropped.
Yeah.
Like,
Still on the floor.
and I think that's why it's hard for anybody to even spoil it because it's kind of like coming out of a traumatic event. Someone's like, "Dude, what just happened?" I don't know, man.
I don't know.
Can I get a hug though? Actually, if you want to experience that movie again, it has a good soundtrack to it. It's more of the score, and actually, it's especially the beginning. The beginning is it's very dramatic and horrifying for a lot of reasons. But there's a famous cry I would say in that movie, and it actually is in the soundtrack as well, and it's just as eerie listening it to again with none of the visuals there.
I want to go back and watch it just because I heard that they hid her parents and her sister in there in different spots.
Oh, I have been wanting to watch the uncut version. I mean, not the uncut, the director's cut.
Oh, God.
Yeah, which capitalizes on the storybook feel as well. Which this movie I don't think gets talked about a lot, but a lot of like scenes, a lot of framing in this movie, and of course with the colors, it looks a lot like a storybook. Granted, a storybook I wouldn't read my kids, but a storybook nonetheless. Or kids if I had any kids.
I think my movie that fits that would be My Girl.
Oh.
Back when I was younger, I remembered, and this is a little bit of a story, but back when I was younger, it was one of my comfort movies. Like I used to watch that movie a lot when I was in, I don't know, middle school age. And not that long ago, we went through a family tragedy where we lost my nephew, and like I was just feeling it really fucking hard, and I was just like, I need to watch a movie that's going to make me feel better. And my dumb ass went, oh, you know what used to make me feel better when I was in middle school? My Girl. I'll watch My Girl. And then I started watching that movie, and then I was a wreck for like a week straight after watching that movie because of the state that I was in when I decided I was going to watch that movie. Bad idea. So it'll probably be another like 15 years before I watch it again, but it is an excellent movie.
And it's so messed up that they recreated the Macaulay Culkin scene in that new Wicker Man movie. What?
Too soon.
Oh. I will watch that new Wicker Man movie though because I saw a scene of Nick Cage dressed like a bear running out of the woods and just knocking the shit out of somebody.
I've been wanting to watch that bad movie for a while.
Oh,
I recently
man.
watched someone do a roast on it, the review that I watched, and yeah, I've been wanting to watch that film. I may have to finally watch it. The bees, not the bees.
I watched the original, and I will recommend that to like any of my pagan friends.
Yeah, I heard that's a good movie.
It's great. It's a great movie, but
Yeah, totally different.
Boy howdy. All right. Anyways,
Especially since they said like the best way to watch that movie is just to think about it as in the mindset that everybody is just trying to mess with Nick Cage, like from the beginning to the end. Like they're just purposely out there just to mess with him. So I want to go in with that mindset. For me, and I know it's a film that Caitlin and I disagree on a bit, but it's a movie that I think about a lot for some reason, and it's Manchester by the Sea. For anyone who hasn't seen that movie, movie is actually pretty significant because I think that's the first movie to get Oscar nominations for Amazon and for streaming in general. I think the year before was Beast of No Nations, but they hadn't reworked their criteria for accepting streaming movies until later. Beast of No Nations, sadly, it was like, yeah, we should invite streaming movies, but sadly, we don't have the rules for it, so we're gonna have to wait till next year. And Manchester by the Sea, it's a hard watching movie. It's a very depressing movie. This guy obviously has some issues. He obviously suffered a very traumatic event that has made him this extremely depressed person, this angry person. And you're watching the film for a while. His brother ends up dying, and that's not the traumatic event. He's messed up way before this, and he takes on having to take care of his nephew, and they are sort of bonding through both suffering through traumatic events. And one of the things the film does brilliantly is they don't reveal what exactly happened to him until later in the film. And there's just a lot of great scenes between it, and it's interesting how they do it with just enough context. Like they'll put you in the middle of something, and as it's going, you're starting to realize, oh, that's what happened, or hey, I can see now what's going on between these two individuals. But it's a movie I've been meaning to go back and watch. I wouldn't say it's like the most depressing movie. If I was to say that, it would be Lily Forever is a movie that I wouldn't go back and rewatch. That's a very unknown movie. It's a Russian movie about, it starts off brutal. It's about a Russian girl whose mom goes to America with her new boyfriend. And they say, hey, we're going to go ahead and send you the plane ticket once we get there, we get the money. They never see her again. And apparently this is something that does happen over there, or I don't know anymore, but during this time. And they just leave her daughter there, and she befriends this other little kid and just trying to get by on life. How they, soften up their daily struggles is by literally sniffing glue, which we always make fun of, but when you see it actually used for straight effect, it's just there's nothing funny about it. It's extremely sad.
I went immediately to Airplane though. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I do too. Airplane and Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Airplane
picked a
big
bad day
joke out
to
of it.
stop sniffing glue.
Yeah, bad day to stop doing amphetamines. Yeah, but when you see it in that movie, it's like, oh no, this is extremely sad, and it ends on a depressing note. It's not great. And then I do have one that I will never go back and watch because I have no idea what I watched, but I know that I did not feel all right watching it, and it's this movie called Alice, which is this Czech movie of Alice in Wonderland. It goes from live action to stop motion pretty quick. I have no idea what I watched. I know I watched Alice in Wonderland, but I have no idea, like, outside of that, what I actually saw. I just know that when I was finished, I never wanted to go back. And I think that film was actually a must-see.
Ooh. I thought you meant for a minute the new Alice with Keke Palmer. But no, it's a different Alice.
Yeah, it's a different Alice. And when you said the new Alice, I was thinking about Still Alice, which is another rough movie, but I would watch that again. Because Julianne Moore, that's her best performance.
That's my favorite actress, so I would have to. I love Julianne Moore. I think for me, it's torn between two films. And they're both very rough subject matters. The first would be Mustang. It's a Turkish language film. It follows a group of sisters who live in a very strict household, and it kind of goes through the problems they have being specifically female and the female experience in that household at that time. So it's definitely a very rough watch. I don't even remember specific plot points, but I remember how it made me feel, and I know I definitely cried a lot watching it, but it's a really great film. I remember that much, but other than that, I don't find myself going back to that. And then the second one would probably be Amour. It's a French language film starring Emmanuel Riva. That one is, speaking of Still Alice, it is a film that tackles a couple with the wife going through dementia. And it's a very hard watch, but it is a very beautiful film. And Emmanuel Riva, she received an Oscar nomination for it. She actually received. She was. It was a very interesting Oscar year. Just a random tidbit, because it was the year that she was nominated for that movie, and then Quinzene Wallace was nominated for Beasts of the Southern Wild, and together they were both at that time both the oldest and the youngest actresses ever nominated for that category. So that was interesting. But yeah, Amour is a beautiful film. I watched it several years ago. Maybe one day I'll go back and watch it, but I still think I need a little bit of time just because of the subject matter.
Yeah, I've seen both of those films. However, Mustang I don't remember being too. It is a rough movie. I would revisit it, but now I'm kind of hesitant because I'm not sure if I'm missing something that was hard to watch, and I'm just watching it in like 45 minutes, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm enjoying this. I don't know why. Oh God. So we'll see.
Like I hard to remember the plot points, but I remember it was rough.
Yeah, Amour is a movie that I watched based on your recommendation, and I enjoy that movie. I would probably be able to watch it again. It is a depressing movie. I know you said that's your most depressing films. Is there anything outside of like depressing that you wouldn't want to go back and rewatch? Like I said, Alice. Though Alice is even, I wouldn't say it's like a good movie that I wouldn't go back and rewatch. That's just a movie I wouldn't go back and rewatch for a lot of reasons. So now even I'm thinking of like what's a good movie that I wouldn't rewatch that isn't depressing.
For me, and this is a super personal specific thing, it's actually going to be Black Panther or anything with Chadwick Boseman, actually. Just because his death, I think, hit me a little bit personally because of the nature of his death. He did die from colon cancer, and our family does have a big genetic risk for colon cancer. My grandmother had colon cancer twice, or our grandmother, Rick's grandmother as well. So for me, that just was a very personally hitting thing that happened. And I remember when it happened, of course, there was stuff online everywhere that I remember I had to take a step away. So I think watching his films might be a little bit rough for me. I'm not in a rush to go watch it just because, like I said, it is very personal to me specifically and my family.
That's still depressing.
Jesus.
But you a film that you enjoy that you wouldn't watch again. But I feel like if I enjoyed it and it wasn't for a depressing reason, I wouldn't have a reason not to watch it.
Yeah, the movie itself, I think, isn't depressing. The reason she's not watching it is depressing, but the movie itself is not depressing.
Well, the theme of depression. I don't know, because I think that's like the only thing that really makes a movie sometimes hard to watch, unless you're a person who doesn't enjoy gore. There are some movies that are very gory that people may admit it is a good movie, but they wouldn't rewatch because of gore. So I don't think there's really too many like great movies that I wouldn't watch outside that.
I can't really think of an exact movie, but I've noticed it a lot recently that films are using more like flashing lights and stuff, and just because I get bad headaches, I probably won't watch those films again. And I've noticed it a lot more recently too, and I think that films really need to have some kind of warning for that.
Yeah, I mean, like, YouTube creators are considered jerks if they don't put those kind of warnings at the beginning of their YouTube videos. So, I mean, I feel like that should be similar. And, like, video games, too. Video games, if they have, like, flashing lights and stuff, they, will have that warning. So I think, yeah, that should be necessary for movies, too. I can't think of anything that fits this criteria, just to be honest with you. I mean, I think that also has to do with something I discussed earlier with, for me, like, suspension of disbelief is not a thing. Like, I'm so separated from anything I watch on a screen, usually, that, like, it's if I don't want to watch something again, it's usually just because it's bad, or I just didn't like it, But watch as soon as we're done recording, like, I'll be like, you know what? There is this one movie.
Run it back.
Just make sure you message us all at 3 o'clock in the morning when you wake up and think of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a cold sweat, just like...
The bees.
Titanic. Titanic. I will never watch that movie again. And it's not anything depressing or anything like that. I can acknowledge that it's a good movie. But my sister, that was like one of her movies that she watched over and over and over again. And that's back when we used to watch it on VHS tape. And it was on multiple VHS tapes. So, like, we would have to, like, switch out the VHS tapes, like, halfway through the movie. And I don't see myself ever watching that movie again, even though I can acknowledge that it is a good movie. There it is.
There it is.
You got one, Baron?
One that I won't go and revisit.
Mm-hmm. But not for a depressing reason?
I mean, because it's bad.
No. Good movie. It's tough, right? That's
okay.
Tough
So
question.
I think that so this is just a more extreme version of the last question.
right.
Because last question was, were we hesitant? This one is what we will just not go watch. I mean, there's stuff. There is something that I will not go watch again, but it's not a movie. Like, for example, I'll just give this. Are you guys familiar with the YouTube project Unus Annus?
Yep.
No.
Okay, so for an entire year, these two YouTubers just did something every day. I mean, it's just stuff. They did something every day with the express purpose is when they were done, they were going to delete everything that they did. And, like, delete the YouTube channel, delete everything. And the purpose was memento mori. So, like, you have to remember that one day you're going to die. So, at the end of this, they stopped. They deleted everything. Now, of course, because it's the internet, people still have it. And people still watch it. I refuse. Because I feel that that is going against the spirit of what they wanted to do. So I won't. I even came in halfway into the whole project. I didn't get to watch everything they did, but you know what? That's kind of the nature of it, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's like I didn't meet Rick until, partway through his life. I didn't get to experience the early parts of his life, and I never will. So
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, I will never go back and watch it.
Yeah, and that's a unique reason too.
No,
Do you have anticipated film that you guys are looking forward to that's coming up in the future?
I'm so basic. It's just Marvel movies. Marvel
Yeah.
movies and Star Wars movies. I mean, first of all, this is a geek podcast, so, like, we have to talk about those things. Like, when we do our Marvel MCU episode, we talk about all the upcoming Marvel movies. And we do our Star Wars episode, we talk about the upcoming Star Wars movies. I feel like a lot of the things that aren't Marvel and aren't Star Wars, like, they just kind of surprise me out of nowhere. Like, I see online that people are talking about a particular movie. I mean, like, I'm a huge Edgar Wright fan, and I had to find out about Last Night in Soho from you after it was already released on DVD. I had no idea that movie was coming out. I had no idea what it was about. When I watched it, I loved it. I went and rented it, and so yeah, it's just I'm so basic when it comes to anticipation. It's all Marvel and Star Wars.
Well, how about this? I'll just
One
list-
specific one of those?
Oh yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
It's
On the Star Wars side, there's one that is a prequel to Rogue One that is coming out. And I basically just want to see it because I'm a huge Alan Tudyk fan, and K2SO is a great character, and I just want to see more out of K2SO. So that movie right there.
So they're making a
TV
prequel
show,
to a
I
prequel.
think. That's the Andor one with Diego Luna.
Mhm.
I love Diego Luna. But yeah, it's probably was going to be a TV show.
Maybe it might be. Oh, geez.
I'm
The
not
whole
sure.
the whole reason I named that one is because I was trying to avoid a TV show.
I could be
Jeez.
wrong. I could be wrong.
No, you're probably right.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of TV.
Yeah.
They see that they're successful with TV and not movies, so it's gonna be a while before they go back to movies. Though a prequel to a prequel is a reason why I don't like Star Wars.
Probably Love and Thunder then.
Yeah.
Thor Ragnarok was my favorite MCU movie until Multiverse of Madness came out, which now that's my current favorite MCU movie. Don't make that face. It was amazing.
Witch fan, so I don't like anything in the MCU with Scarlet Witch.
Oh, okay. Maybe you like it then because, like, she gets wrecked.
I didn't like. Well, I didn't like that movie. Sorry.
But, no, I loved it. But yeah, I mean, I love Thor Ragnarok, so Love and Thunder I think will be awesome. I hope so. Anyway.
Yeah, I loved Thor Ragnarok. That's probably my favorite MCU movie. So I'm also looking forward to Love and Thunder, and I'm really looking forward to Natalie Portman's Guns. She looks amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
So
yeah,
I'll
those
just-
arms.
I'll list off some not comic movies that you might be excited for, but you're just not thinking about them right now. So Jurassic World Dominion.
Mm-mm.
Excited. I'm excited for that.
Here I'm gonna get after what because has been discussed on this podcast already. I'm gonna get a ton of hate here. I don't like any of the Jurassic movies. Jurassic Park, Jurassic
What?
Park 2, Jurassic World. I don't like them. They're not for me.
I'm gonna hang up.
we weren't all dinosaur kids. That's not a thing.
No. The thing is, I was a dinosaur kid, but my dinosaur movies were Land Before Time.
Good ones. Also good ones.
Nope, by Jordan Peele.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited about that. And
We'll
then and it is going to be next year, but John Wick 4.
I do like the John Wick movies.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can say I'm excited about it, just because I don't know how much further they can take it. I mean, I wasn't a huge fan of John Wick 3. Like, I feel like it was just more of the same, and I didn't feel as emotionally connected as I did with, like, the first John Wick movie. John Wick 2, I was along for the ride, just because, like, I was like, yeah, John Wick 1 was good. Let's do this. I'm ready just for some more straight action. John Wick 3, I just felt, like, disconnected from the whole thing, and I kind of felt like I was just there because I felt like I had to be there. So John Wick 4, we'll see if they can bring me back, but I don't know if I can say I'm excited about it.
And then just for me, the very upcoming comic book movies I'm excited for is the obvious Thor: Love and Thunder. Wakanda Forever comes out this year, and I'm not ready. I want it. I want to watch it, but I'm not ready. But I want to watch it, but I'm not ready. And then Quantum Mania, because we should be getting some big Kang stuff happening in that. I'm waiting for more Kang stuff. I can't believe that all we're getting right now is just Loki doing the Kang stuff. Anyways.
Surprise me.
Yeah. And then Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
I mean, there's
So
more
pumped.
stuff, but that's the most recent stuff. The closest stuff that's coming out.
I have, yes, Across the Spider-Verse is going to be my my most anticipated. I love Into the Spider-Verse. My favorite superhero movie. One of my favorite movies in general. One of my favorite movies of that year. I love so much about that film. It's as a huge Spider-Man fan as I am, I think that was the perfect one. That's the only one I really actually love, and it's just one of my favorite Spider-Man properties.
And
I do
I'll
have a
say this
couple-
just because nobody brings this up about this movie, because there's so many other amazing things about Into the Spider-Verse that people don't talk about this. I think John Mulaney needs to be in more stuff. Like,
He's in Chip and Dale.
Yeah, that was one thing I said about Chip and Dale, because I saw that movie and I was like, I don't want to see this movie. It looks bad, but it's got John Mulaney and now I'm blank Andy Samberg.
Andy Samberg.
Yeah, and I'll watch anything with Andy Samberg in it too. So John Mulaney and Andy Samberg, it was like that's why they've got me. That's why I'm gonna see that movie. But other than that, like, it looks bad. We'll see.
I'm actually looking forward to it. It's not one of my most anticipated, and I have a couple of others just to kind of elaborate on it more, because I think Cross the Spider-Verse is probably the most well-known and one of the most anticipated movie by a lot of people. Another film that's probably the second most anticipated I am, and it's not as widely known, is the movie To Your Darling. It's the movie being directed by Olivia Wilde. It has Florence Pugh, who we
Wrong
talked about.
title.
God dang, what title is it? Because there's so many Darling movies.
Don't worry, darling.
Don't Worry, Darling. I was going to mix it up with Kill Your Darlings, and then... Anyway, Don't Worry, Darling, which actually makes sense for what we've seen with that. I love Booksmart, so I'm excited to see what Olivia Wilde does with this. I love Florence Pugh. She's a great, fantastic actress. I've heard some good things about Harry Styles. I like Chris Pine. I like seeing him in roles outside of the action movies that he's known for. I love him in Hell or High Water, and I've been waiting for another property to come out with him in it. A movie that I'm hoping is good, but it doesn't look like it's going to be based on the director's track record, is Bullet Train. I like a lot of what I'm seeing in Bullet Train. That's the one with, it looks like a high concept film, all taking place on this train with 5 assassins aboard a fast moving bullet train. Find out their mission, have something in common. You have Sandra Bullock, Brad Pitt, Zazie Beetz, Aaron Taylor Johnson, who we haven't seen in a while, Michael Shannon, who we haven't seen in a while. However, the director, David Leitch, is one I'm not a fan of. He did Hobbs and Shaw, which I'm not a fan of the Fast and Furious movies. I'm not a fan of a lot of those blockbusters, but I was looking forward to that movie, and I gave it a perfect chance, and it just failed for me horribly. I didn't like Deadpool 2. I didn't hear good things about Atomic Blonde, but he was unaccredited in John Wick. So I don't know what he directed in there. I'm guessing some action scenes. So we'll see how this movie comes out. I'm also excited for Nope, but I'm not sure, is this going to be Get Out level, or is this going to be Us level, or is it going to fall? If it falls in between, then that's great, because I think In Between is still a great solid film. Us isn't bad. It's just I think it's subpar.
I like Deadpool too.
Yeah. Me too.
Oh, you did? Yeah, we
Yeah.
never talked about it. I did not like Deadpool 2.
I liked it better than the first one.
What?
Oh, I liked it better in the first one because it actually got a budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
I think that was the problem, was giving them money. When you give them money, they become uncreative, and they try to do the same thing they did before, just with more money. Sometimes you gotta take money away. French New Wave proved that.
Yeah, there's 3 that I'm super excited for. The first one is coming out this weekend, and that's Men by Alex Garland. He's a great
Same.
director. We've seen his first 2 films were Ex Machina and my favorite, Annihilation. So he has a really good track record so far for being kind of still a new budding filmmaker. So I'm really excited to see what Men's about. The second one is Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. It's a slasher coming out, and I think that this is going to be a slasher more for Gen Z, but I'm still excited for it because I think that it's kind of pokes fun of itself, and I'm kind of hoping that it gives what Scream 5 or just Scream, however you want to call it, didn't give for me. And it has Rachel Seno in it, who was the star of one of my favorite movies last year, Shiva Baby. So I'm really excited for that one. The trailer looks promising. It looks like it's going to be a fun movie. And then last, of course, is the one that I would say film Twitter is all up in hands about, and it's Greta Gerwig's Barbie. Especially with the new news that came out, it looks like there's going to be multiple Barbies and multiple Kens in this. So I'm really excited for it, especially because it was revealed that Issa Rae might be playing a Barbie or a version of Barbie. And I love Issa Rae. I've been following her since she did her YouTube channel. And I'm just really excited for that movie. And Greta Gerwig, she has a lot of promise as a director. She's also kind of an up-and-coming director a little bit. She did Little Woman, which I thought was amazing. And yeah, I'm just really excited for it.
She did do that. And I actually like that film a lot more than I thought it was. And Alex Garland, just want to give him some credit. He is a director and writer. And this is now his 3rd film. He did Ex Machina, Annihilation, which I enjoyed on repeated viewings. I found out a lot more than the initial. So I'll say if you didn't really like it too much, give it a second try. Ex Machina I can watch all the time as well. Almost a comfort movie. And then... yeah, he's directing Rayman. The only reason I didn't mention that is because it comes out. It came out today, actually. Unfortunately, I won't be able to see it today.
Yeah, I will say Annihilation is the only movie that truly scared me, and it's not even a horror movie. I think it's the music. The music in it is terrifying. It's really good though.
And Nightmare Bear.
Oh, I've been wanting to watch Annihilation.
Really interesting concept.
Yeah, I need to tell my Plex dealer to get this. Hey, is that Valkyrie?
Yeah, Tessa
Yeah,
Thompson's
she's
in
in
it.
That's her
I
name.
love Tessa Thompson.
Yeah, her, Natalie Portman, too, the next Thor.
I'm so excited. I love both of them.
Yeah.
Oh, and I saw
They'll be
Bast.
reuniting.
Bast is going to be in that.
Oh, I did see that. Yeah.
Who is the patron goddess of Wakanda?
Oh, okay. Oh, dope.
Yeah. Oh, wait, oh, that made me so mad. It's like they showed that picture of Tessa Thompson and Natalie Portman, and everybody's like going crazy about it. Oh, it's like, can we talk about her in the corner, please?
Yeah, it was a weird frame. Like, I that's what confused me with it.
One of
I was
those
like,
just
shut up,
freaking out. It was the arms. There's just so much arms. I couldn't notice anything else.
All the arms, all the arms.
She got the Monsters Inc. Treatment on that.
Yeah,
What's his name?
Mike Wazowski.
Yeah, Mike Wazowski. So yeah, you might as well put the sticker over that.
Yes, exactly.
Put the release date over her face.
All right, Baron.
All right. There we go. So this bow. Well, the extensive subject of movies, and we were all over the place in this, and I'm sure that you'll appreciate the info that is coming out I definitely know that a lot of this made me think about how not just tonight, but the podcast that we were on yesterday that you can go watch over on their channel. All this movie talk has definitely made me rethink how I view movies and how I view the movies that I love. And I hope that this inspires you to go out there and watch those movies that you love. Watch those movies that were recommended during the course of this podcast, and maybe develop a new opinion on your take on movies. And when you do, why don't you come back and let us know what you think?
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Casters Guild podcast. Caitlin Bryant, if people like what you had to say and they want to find you anywhere on the internet, where can they do that?
Find us at Op Silver Screen on Twitter and Instagram. It's Operation Silver Screen on Facebook, but on Twitter and Instagram, it's Op Silver Screen. Also, if you want to connect to us personally, you can find us on our letterboxes if you want to see what we're watching throughout the week and some things that we might not be featuring on our podcast. You can find us on Letterboxd for Brian, it's going to be at Swank Seal. That's capital S, capital S. And for me, it's going to be Coffee Spoon Kate. That's Coffee Spoon CAIT. You can also find my personal Twitter at Coffee Spoon Kate as well.
Yes, and if you yourself, taking in everything that we said, and you have a movie that you think is a must-see and fits this criteria, but isn't talked about enough, go ahead and let us know in our social medias. Even if we don't think that it fits with our show, I'll still, most likely go out and watch it, even if I haven't, and come back to you as well. I also want to use one of the things that is provided by this show, and that is the, what is it called? The Guild Decree?
Guild Decree.
Yep. The Guild Decree. So I had another plan for this, but this is perfect. And it doesn't really need a Guild Decree because it's already been proven, but Caitlin still wants to argue about it. A24 is a movie studio.
No.
Nope, can't argue with
Guild
it.
Decree. It's a Guild Decree.
It's a Guild Decree. And also,
Movie
by
studio.
definition, it is a movie studio, so it really doesn't need that.
No.
But it's a Guild Decree, so it doesn't matter.
Yep,
No.
Guild Decree.
Well, the Guild Decrees only work for this podcast. So.
As long as you're in the guild, as long as you're
Yep,
in the
as long as
guild
you're in the
hall.
Yep.
It is a movie studio. Granted, it is a distributor as well, but it has produced movies, and then also it doesn't matter. They could just sell bananas. Guild Decree, they're now a movie studio.
It's not.
Oh, bananas.
All right, so check out all those links in the description down below. While you're down there, make sure you check out our featured charity again. As I stated before, face surgery is successful, but she is still in recovery and still needs your help. So make sure you check out her story and donate if you can. Check out the link for T-Villain. I would recommend taking that link and bookmarking our link for T-Villain and going and checking it out once a day. They really do have some awesome stuff. I wasn't sure if I was going to say this, but I feel like I need to say this. I was just showing my wife. They now offer period panties on their website, and they're apparently very comfortable for that particular time, and they're super funny. So check those out too.
I actually just bought a shirt through the course of this podcast.
So yeah, make sure you check out those links. Find us on all the socials, and we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye.
See ya.
Bye. 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 Bye.